I stood there in my robe, steam still clinging to my skin, as the receptionist's smile faltered. The bill lay open on the counter, and my daughter's voice cut through the perfumed air like a blade. "I'm not covering a parasite." Laughter from her friends rippled around me, sharp and humiliating. My cheeks burned, but my hands didn't shake as I reached for my wallet. I paid, head high, while she strutted out as if I were nothing. Parasite. After raising her, feeding her, building her chances from my sacrifices, I was reduced to that one word. A parasite. Hi, my name is Clara, and this is my story. Before we start the story, tell me where you're tuning in from so that I may know how far my story is reaching. Drop it in the comment, and don't forget to subscribe. She called me a parasite in front of strangers. I never forgot the sting. The eucalyptus steam clung to Clara's skin as she stepped into the spa's marbled lobby, her robe cinched neatly, her hair still damp from the mineral pool. For a moment she allowed herself the softness of it, the warmth, the faint trickle of a fountain, the quiet hush of wealth cocooning her. Samantha walked 2 paces ahead, phone in hand, her laughter sharp and practiced. At the checkout desk, Clara assumed what she always had. Her daughter had invited her, flashing that bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, promising, "It's on me, Mom. You deserve it." The receptionist, a young woman with polished nails and a nervous smile, slid the bill across the counter. Samantha barely looked up, tapping at her phone. Clara hesitated, waiting for her daughter to produce a card. Instead, Samantha's voice rang out, slicing through the tranquil air. "Oh no, I'm not covering for a parasite." The word landed like a slap. The lobby froze. A couple waiting for massages exchanged glances. A man in a linen shirt chuckled under his breath. Even the receptionist's smile faltered, her hands fluttering uncertainly over the keyboard. Clara stood still, her cheeks warming, her fingers tightening on the strap of her bag. For a moment the years replayed, late nights balancing her credit union's ledgers, scrimping after her husband died, the sacrifices that had built Samantha's education, her wedding, even the down payment on that glittering mansion. And now, in a place scented with lavender and lemon water, her life's worth had been reduced to a hissed insult. She swallowed, lifted her chin, and reached into her handbag. Her card slid across the counter with steady hands. "I'll cover it," she said, voice even, eyes fixed forward. The receptionist swiped the card, avoiding her gaze, and returned it with a hurried, "Thank you, ma'am." Samantha's lips curled in a smug smile as she slipped her phone into her purse. "See, Mom? Independence looks good on you." She turned and strode toward the exit where 2 of her friends, equally manicured, equally shallow, waited. They giggled as Samantha rejoined them, their laughter echoing off the marble. Clara followed slowly, her steps measured, her face composed, though her heart throbbed with a betrayal sharper than any spa treatment could soothe. Outside, the Florida sun blazed, bouncing off the polished cars waiting in valet. Samantha kissed her friends on the cheek, slipped into her white Range Rover, and sped away without a backward glance. Clara stood on the curb, the scent of exhaust replacing lavender, the sting of humiliation still hot on her skin. Around her, the world moved on. Valet attendants whistling for cars, women in silk wraps adjusting sunglasses, men tapping impatiently at their watches. But inside, something shifted. She drew in a long, slow breath. Her voice came low, quiet enough for only herself to hear, but firm, deliberate, like the sound of a gavel. "Parasites drain," she whispered. Her eyes hardened, her grip tightening on the strap of her bag. "I'll drain her." Clara turned toward the parking lot, her steps calm, her face unreadable. But her mind was already running numbers, tallying debts, and plotting. the first quiet stirrings of a plan Samantha would never see coming. The cafe smelled of roasted beans and warm bread, a sharp contrast to the sterile, perfumed air of the spa the day before. Clara slipped into a corner booth, her cardigan neat, her posture straight. Across from her sat Marjorie Klein, sharp bob of silver hair, glasses perched low on her nose, a woman whose tongue could cut steel, and whose legal mind had never dulled with retirement. "You're late," Marjorie teased, stirring her coffee with a deliberate hand. "That's not like you." Clara sighed, setting her bag on the seat beside her. "I almost didn't come. Yesterday," her voice trailed, but the humiliation flickered fresh in her eyes. Marjorie tilted her head, waiting. Clara took a breath. "She called me a parasite," loud enough for strangers to hear. "I paid for both of us while she walked out, smiling." Marjorie's spoon clinked against her cup, her face hardening. "A parasite?" She leaned in, voice low but sharp. "After you raised her, educated her, carried her through every mess? Parasite." Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. "She wanted to humiliate me." Marjorie sat back, her smile turning wolfish. "Then let's humiliate her with paper. You want revenge? We'll bleed her mansion dry." Clara blinked, surprised by the bluntness. "Marjorie." "Don't Marjorie me," her friend cut in. "Derek's hedge fund is collapsing. I still have friends in finance. Whispers fly faster than filings. They're leveraged to the teeth. And that mansion she parades? Mortgage arrears are stacking like poker chips." The words sank in slowly, each one lighting a spark inside Clara. She thought of Samantha's smug face at the spa, of the way her friends had laughed. The idea of stripping her daughter of the very house she flaunted felt like more than justice. It felt like balance. Marjorie leaned closer, her eyes sharp. "She thinks she's untouchable. She's not. I wrote half the foreclosure clauses sitting in Florida law. I can gut her with her own signatures." Clara's hand curled around her coffee cup, the warmth steadying her. For the first time since the spa, she felt control sliding back into her grasp. "If I'm a parasite," she said slowly, "then I'll drain every lie they built on." Marjorie's smile widened. She reached down to her leather briefcase, the old hinges squeaking as she flipped it open. Inside, a neat stack of papers waited. She slid them across the table, the legal letterhead crisp, the words at the top like a death sentence. "Notice of foreclosure proceedings." Clara stared at the bold black letters, her reflection faint in the glossy paper. Marjorie tapped the page with one manicured nail. "Let's show your daughter what it feels like to be drained." She paraded her mansion. I saw the cracks in the walls. The Miami sun shimmered on the turquoise surface of Samantha's pool, where inflatable swans bobbed lazily among clinking glasses of rosé. Laughter spilled over the hedge-lined yard, the scent of grilled shrimp and expensive sunscreen mingling in the humid air. Music thumped low from hidden speakers, curated, expensive, and just loud enough to mask the tension beneath the gloss. Clara sat in the shade of a striped umbrella, sipping sparkling water, her posture neat, her eyes watchful. She hadn't wanted to come, but the invitation had been extended in front of others, and refusal would have looked bitter. So here she was, watching, listening, memorizing. Samantha flitted between guests in a silk cover-up, oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, her laugh too bright, too rehearsed. She gestured toward the mansion with a sweep of her hand. "Isn't it just perfect? Every corner custom. Derek says the market's up again, worth more every day." Clara's gaze followed to Derek, lounging by the outdoor bar. He swirled a glass of scotch, his tan face stretched in a confident grin. "Markets always bounce back," he declared loudly, though his eyes darted too quickly, his fingers tapping the glass as if he couldn't quite believe his own bravado. Guests nodded politely, but Clara caught the sideways glances, the murmured comments slipping beneath the laughter. I heard they missed last quarter's payment. Second mortgage already in default. Looks like foreclosures on the horizon. The whispers rode the humid air like gnats, hard to ignore once noticed. Clara leaned back, letting them wash over her. Later, inside the kitchen, Clara set her empty glass on the counter and froze. A stack of envelopes sat by the sink, their bold lettering impossible to miss. HOA, past due, final notice. She didn't touch them, but the sight was enough. The cracks weren't just in the walls. They were in every brick of the foundation. When she stepped back outside, Samantha intercepted her with a saccharine smile. "Don't mind the gossip," she said breezily, as though she'd read Clara's mind. "People get jealous when you're successful. They'll say anything." Her sunglasses hid her eyes, but Clara didn't need to see them. She could hear the thinness in her daughter's voice, the brittle edge beneath the gloss. Clara simply nodded, offering no comfort, no words, only silence, which somehow seemed to unnerve Samantha more than any confrontation would have. The party carried on, music swelling, laughter rising, champagne flowing, but Clara had already left in spirit. She sat quietly until the sun dipped low, then excused herself with polite words no one really heard. On the drive home, Clara's hands rested steady on the wheel, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. The city lights of Miami glittered like jewels, but all she saw were numbers: arrears, liens, auction dates. Her humiliation at the spa replayed like a film reel, but this time it was overlaid with whispers of foreclosure and envelopes stamped "Final Notice." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Clara drove through the Miami night calm, calculating, her mind no longer on the sting of the insult, but on the mansion that would soon be hers to drain. She thought I was retired. I never retired from numbers. The glow of Clara's desk lamp cast long shadows across her modest living room. The walls held framed photographs of her late husband, of Samantha as a gap-toothed child, of Clara herself in a navy blazer behind the counter of the credit union, where she had spent 3 decades mastering the art of money. Retirement had taken her out of the branch, but not out of the habit. Numbers still sang to her, steady, unflinching, impossible to fake. She adjusted her glasses and logged into the county clerk's public records site. Her fingers moved swiftly, decades of practice in balancing accounts guiding her search. Samantha's address appeared in neat black type. Clara clicked. What she saw was no surprise, but it was satisfying. Lien number 1, contractors unpaid. Lien number 2, HOA dues delinquent. Lien number 3, tax penalty unresolved. She scrolled further. The mortgage section glared like a red flag. Second mortgage, 90 days delinquent. Clara leaned back, a slow smile curling across her lips. So, the cracks weren't just in the walls? She murmured. They're in the foundation. The next morning, she met Marjorie at her dining table, papers spread between them. Official records, copies of liens, mortgage notices. Marjorie whistled low, tapping a manicured nail against the printout. Second mortgage nearly defaulted, 3 liens on top of it. This isn't a house, Clara. It's a Jenga tower. Clara folded her hands, calm. Foreclosure? Marjorie's eyes gleamed. Inevitable. Sooner rather than later. The word tasted rich, like justice served cold. Clara stood and crossed to the small safe in her hallway. From inside, she pulled a slim folder, her saving statements. Certificates of deposit, treasury bonds, an emergency fund she had built piece by piece across decades of careful living. She laid them on the table, her expression unreadable. Marjorie raised a brow. You're liquidating? Not all, Clara replied. Enough. Her eyes flicked to the stack of Samantha's debts. She thinks parasites starve hosts, but she'll learn hosts can starve too. 2 weeks later, a notice appeared in the Miami-Dade County Gazette. Clara sat with her morning coffee, the paper crackling between her hands, as her eyes found the headline buried in the legal section: Foreclosure Auction. 60 days. Her heart thudded once, steady and sure. She folded the paper neatly, slid it into her file, and sipped her coffee slowly, savoring the taste of inevitability. Clara whispered into the quiet room, her voice low and certain. 60 days until the parasite owns the host. She lounged by her pool. I raised my hand. The glow of Samantha's phone screen lit up her face as she reclined on a lounge chair, snapping a photo of her mimosa against the sparkling water of her pool. Living, the dream, the caption read. She didn't know, not yet, that the dream had already slipped through her fingers. Downtown, in a county courthouse that smelled faintly of dust and ink, Clara stepped into the auction room. Her pearls gleamed modestly against her navy blouse, her back straight, her every movement measured. She wasn't here for spectacle. She was here for closure. The room buzzed with murmurs from investors and speculators, their eyes sharp, their voices low. The clerk shuffled papers at the podium, reading out properties one by one. Most went quickly: raised hands, clipped numbers, gavel strikes. Then came the address Clara knew by heart: her daughter's mansion. Bidders leaned forward, interest peaked. A $2.5 million property, already leveraged to the bone, now dangled like bait. Opening bid, $1.2 million, sir. Hands shot up, numbers climbed. Clara's heart thudded once, then steadied. She lifted her hand, calm. Her voice when she spoke was steady, carrying decades of experience with balance sheets. 1.3. The bidding continued, sharp, fast, aggressive. 1.5ers, 1.7, 1.9. Sweat beaded at the clerk's temple. The crowd murmured, calculating risk and profit. Clara sat poised, her hands folded, waiting. When the room finally slowed, 2 bidders remained, and Clara. One dropped out at $2.1 million, the other hesitated at 2.2. Marjorie leaned close, her voice a whisper sharp as glass. One more bid, take it. Clara raised her hand. 2.3. The other bidder's jaw tightened. He looked at his papers, shook his head, and lowered his card. The room stilled. The clerk cleared his throat. 2.3 million. Once. Twice. The gavel struck. Sold. The sound reverberated like thunder through Clara's bones. She didn't flinch, didn't smile. She simply reached for the pen offered, signing her name with neat, precise strokes. Margaret Clara Jennings. The deed slid across the table, the ink drying as if sealing not just ownership but destiny. Outside the courthouse, Marjorie exhaled a laugh. You did it, Clara. You own her palace. Clara adjusted her pearls, her voice calm, almost serene. She called me a parasite. She looked toward the bright Miami skyline, her eyes cold with certainty. Parasite owns the host now. Somewhere across town, Samantha posted another poolside selfie, unaware that the deed to the mansion beneath her was no longer hers. The day after the auction, Clara sat at her kitchen table with a pot of chamomile tea, her reading glasses perched on her nose. A small stack of documents waited beside her, utilities listed neatly: water, gas, electric. She sipped her tea, calm, then picked up the phone. Yes, she said to the representative, her voice steady, professional. Property deed has transferred. Please update accounts to reflect new ownership. Click after click of the keyboard confirmed it. Within an hour, the water account was under Clara Jennings's name. Samantha and Derek hadn't paid in weeks. The system processed it as delinquent. Service terminated. Across town, Samantha twisted the faucet in her marble kitchen sink. Nothing. She tried again, harder this time, as if force would coax water from empty pipes. "Derek!" she shouted, panic sharpening her voice. He appeared from the living room, tie loosened, face already weary. "What now?" "There's no water." She turned the handle again, the dry scrape echoing through the silent kitchen. "Nothing's coming out." Derek marched to the bathroom, tried the shower. Dead. He cursed under his breath. "Must be the bill." Samantha's cheeks flushed hot. "I told you to pay it." "You told me not to touch the accounts." His voice rose, brittle with anger. "You wanted control, remember?" Neighbors watering lawns glanced over curiously as Samantha stormed outside, screaming into her phone at the utility company. Whispers spread quick as wildfire. No water? In that house? The irony was too delicious for the community not to savor. That evening, Clara filled a tall glass from her own faucet. The cool stream sparkled under the kitchen light. She lifted it to her lips, savoring the taste of clear, cold water, her expression serene. Across the table, Marjorie chuckled, raising her wine glass. "How's it feel to hold the faucet, Clara?" Clara smiled faintly, setting her glass down with a soft clink. "Feels like justice." 2 days later, a black and white sheriff's cruiser rolled slowly up Samantha's pristine driveway. The deputy stepped out, a folded paper in hand. The knock at the door was firm, final, official eviction notice. She filled her house with laughter. Silence took it back. The chandeliers blazed in Samantha's great room, casting golden light over the glittering crowd. Music pulsed from hidden speakers. Champagne fizzed in crystal flutes, and laughter rippled across the pool deck. Samantha lived for nights like this, where her wealth seemed undeniable, where envy hung in the air as thick as the scent of imported orchids. Clara wasn't invited this time. That suited her just fine. Samantha twirled near the pool, snapping selfies with her friends, her sequined dress catching every light. "See?" she bragged loudly. "Rumors are just rumors. Do I look like someone losing her house?" Her friends laughed on cue, though their eyes darted toward the shadows where whispers had started weeks ago. Then, without warning, the house gave a shuddering sigh. The music cut. The chandeliers flickered, then went black. Outside, the pool lights dimmed until the water was nothing but a dark, silent sheet. The only sound left was the soft clinking of glasses and a few nervous chuckles. "Derek!" Samantha shrieked, her voice slicing through the stunned silence. "Fix it." Her husband stumbled through the darkened living room, fumbling for switches. Nothing. He pulled his phone from his pocket. Dead battery. He cursed, grabbing a flashlight from the drawer. Guests shuffled awkwardly, murmurs spreading like smoke. No power? Didn't they just lose water last week? What's happening with this house? Samantha's manicured hand gripped Derek's arm as he returned, his face pale. "Tell me this is just a breaker. Tell me." He swallowed hard, sweat glistening on his forehead. "It's not a breaker, it's the house, Sam. It's gone." Her voice cracked, high-pitched with disbelief. "Gone? What are you talking about?" Derek looked around at the watching guests, shame burning in his eyes. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Foreclosure. We lost it." The silence hit harder than the blackout. Every guest stood frozen, clutching half-empty glasses, their expensive shoes shifting on polished floors that no longer belonged to the hosts. Samantha's face twisted, her mascara smudging as her mouth formed the question she already feared. Who would do this? Derek's gaze flicked to the floor, then back to his wife. His words were a confession and a death sentence all at once. Your mother. The glass slipped from Samantha's hand, shattering against the marble tile. Champagne splattered across her heels, the sharp tang of alcohol filling the air. Gasps rippled through the crowd, some covering their mouths, others already edging toward the door. Guests began to leave in silence, murmuring excuses, unwilling to stay in a house that no longer radiated power. The music didn't return. The lights stayed dark. Laughter had fled, replaced by the sound of glass crunching beneath Samantha's trembling feet. She stood in the shadows, her body rigid, her world collapsing around her while Derek sat heavily on the edge of the couch, head in his hands. Samantha stared at the broken glass, realization dawning like ice in her veins. Her mother had done this. She called me parasite. The court called me owner. The Miami courthouse was packed that morning, the air heavy with the mix of cologne, coffee, and nerves. Samantha swept through the double doors in a fitted black dress and oversized sunglasses, flanked by a lawyer who looked barely out of law school. She clutched her designer handbag like armor, chin lifted as if posture alone could erase her crumbling reality. Across the aisle, Clara sat composed in a simple navy suit, pearls at her throat, Marjorie at her side. She didn't fidget. She didn't even look at her daughter. She only waited. The judge adjusted his glasses, flipping through the thick packet of filings. "Mrs. Holt," he said finally, glancing up at Samantha, "you filed an emergency injunction to halt eviction from the property at—" He read the address aloud, each syllable puncturing Samantha's pride. Samantha leaned forward, her voice trembling but loud enough for the gallery to hear. "Yes, Your Honor. My mother, my own mother, can't take my home." Whispers rippled across the courtroom. The judge arched a brow. "Counsel, do you have evidence to support your client's claim of ownership?" Samantha's lawyer shuffled nervously, pushing forward a thin stack of documents. "Your Honor, the home was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Holt. It's been their residence for 5 years. Marjorie rose smoothly, interrupting with a crisp, "and financed with debt they failed to pay." She slid a thicker file toward the clerk. "Here's the foreclosure record. Auction held lawfully. Winning bid, Mrs. Clara Jennings. Deed filed and recorded." The judge flipped through the deed, nodding slowly. His gaze shifted to Clara, who met it without a flicker of hesitation. "Mrs. Jennings," he asked, "is this your signature?" Clara's voice was soft but steady. "Yes, Your Honor." Samantha lurched to her feet, sunglasses slipping down her nose. "She tricked us. She's vindictive. She's—" "Sit down, Mrs. Holt," the judge cut in, his gavel tapping once. "This court is not a place for theatrics." Derek sat slumped at the respondent's table, his face gray, eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't speak, didn't defend, didn't even glance at his wife. Marjorie clasped her hands behind her back, her voice slicing the silence. "The purchase was legal, the deed valid, the foreclosure final. There is no trick here, only consequence." The judge straightened in his chair, the finality in his tone echoing like a bell. "The injunction is denied. Eviction stands." The gavel fell. Clara exhaled quietly, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. The courtroom could do that for her. Samantha, trembling with rage, pointed a manicured finger toward her mother, her voice cracked, shrill. "You'll regret this. I swear, you'll regret this." Clara didn't flinch. She only lowered her gaze, as though Samantha's fury was no more than background noise. "She called me parasite. Now she begged at my door." The knock came just after dusk. Clara had been setting a kettle on the stove, the smell of chamomile rising in the quiet of her kitchen. At first, she considered not answering. But the pounding grew louder, frantic. When she opened the door, Samantha stood there, mascara streaking her cheeks, her once perfect hair clinging in damp strands to her face. The designer dress looked wrinkled, desperate, as if it had been slept in. "Mom," she choked, her voice breaking. "Please, please don't do this." Clara regarded her daughter in silence, the steam kettle hissing faintly behind her. She thought of the spa, of the way Samantha had laughed with her friends while calling her a parasite. The memory sat in Clara's chest like a stone. Samantha reached for her mother's hand, but Clara stepped back. "You're evicting me," she continued, her voice quivering. "You've taken everything. I'll change. I'll be better. Just, please, don't do this." Clara's expression was calm, carved in steel. "Did you give me dignity at the spa?" Samantha blinked, tears spilling fresh. That was different. Clara's eyes narrowed, her voice soft but lethal. "So is this." The silence stretched between them, heavier than the humid Miami air. Samantha's sobs filled the space, jagged and ugly. For the first time, Clara saw her daughter not as a woman in control, but as a cornered child, one who had never learned the value of humility until it was too late. Samantha's desperation curdled into rage. "Fine," she spat, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Keep your damn house. Keep it all." She turned sharply, her heels clattering against the porch steps, vanishing into the darkness without another word. Clara stood in the doorway long after the sound of Samantha's car faded. The kettle whistled behind her, shrill and insistent. She finally closed the door, locked it, and returned to her kitchen. Later that night, Clara sat at her desk beneath the glow of her lamp. Papers lay spread before her. Deeds, account statements, and one document she had left untouched. Her will. She uncapped her pen with steady fingers, the scratch of ink loud in the quiet room. Line by line, she rewrote the terms. No ambiguity, no loopholes. Samantha was cut out completely, with language so airtight even the most cunning lawyer couldn't undo it. Every asset, every cent, every future piece of her estate flowed directly to Lily, her granddaughter, the only one who had ever treated Clara with love and respect. Marjorie sat across the table, sipping her wine. "Are you sure?" she asked, though her eyes already knew the answer. Clara's pen didn't pause. "Absolutely." When she signed her name at the bottom, she exhaled, not with relief, but with certainty. Clara set down her pen, her voice calm, resolute. "She took my dignity once. I've taken her future forever. She flaunted her mansion. I signed for the keys." The sheriff's cruiser idled in Samantha's driveway, its flashing lights muted in the morning sun. A moving truck rumbled nearby, its back door yawning open as deputies hauled out boxes. What had once been a temple of Samantha's pride was now stripped bare, piece by piece. Clara sat in her sedan across the street, the air conditioner humming softly. From her vantage point, she saw the manicured hedges, the glittering facade of the mansion, and the chaos unraveling at its steps. Derek emerged first, head bowed, his suit jacket slung carelessly over one arm. He didn't fight, didn't argue. He walked down the driveway slowly, like a man carrying invisible weights, and slid wordlessly into his car. The door closed with a dull thud, a sound of surrender. Then came Samantha. She stormed through the doorway, hair wild, eyes bloodshot, screaming obscenities at the deputies. Her voice cracked as she pointed toward the sheriff, toward the neighbors who had gathered to watch, toward the sky itself. "This is theft. This is fraud. You can't do this to me." But the deputies didn't flinch. The sheriff read calmly from the paper in his hand. "Per court order, you are hereby evicted. The property belongs to Mrs. Clara Jennings." Clara's fingers tapped lightly on her steering wheel. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She only observed, the way one might watch a storm finally breaking after years of thunder. When the last of the boxes were loaded and the deputies drove away, Clara opened her car door and stepped out. Her heels clicked softly against the pavement as she walked toward the house. On the porch, Lily waited, eyes wide with awe. Clara handed her the small velvet pouch the sheriff had just passed her. Inside lay the new keys, heavy and cold. Lily's voice trembled with pride. "Grandma, You're stronger than all of them. Clara placed the keys in her granddaughter's hand, her grip firm. Strength isn't about shouting, she said softly. It's about standing when no one expects you to. From her car down the street, Samantha watched with shaking hands as her mother stepped over the threshold she once called her own. Her phone buzzed in her palm. She unlocked it, opened her social media app, and with fury blurring her vision, began to type. Within minutes, a post went live. My own mother stole my home. Betrayal doesn't begin to cover it. The mansion had once screamed excess: mirrored walls, gaudy chandeliers, a dining table that could seat 20 but never hosted a single real conversation. When Clara stepped through the door as its rightful owner, she didn't see wealth, she saw waste, and she knew exactly what she would do with it. Over the following weeks, contractors came and went, their trucks parked in the driveway where Samantha's luxury SUVs once gleamed. The shallow poolside bar was ripped out, replaced by raised garden beds. Marble floors, cracked and smudged, gave way to warm hardwood. The cavernous showroom living room, where Samantha posed for countless Instagram photos, became a library. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books Clara had collected over a lifetime, their spines a rainbow of quiet wisdom. One afternoon, Lily sat cross-legged in the new study space, textbooks spread around her. Sunlight poured through wide open windows, the hum of the garden fountain drifting in from outside. She looked up at Clara, her eyes glowing. It feels like a home now, not a stage. Clara's heart softened. She smoothed Lily's hair back, her smile faint but proud. That's because it was never about the walls, she said. It's about the life inside them. Marjorie stopped by one evening, walking slowly through the library with an approving eye. She tapped her glasses against her palm, smirking. Looks better already. Less Versailles knockoff, more wisdom retreat. Clara chuckled, setting a fresh vase of roses on the coffee table. Parasites don't build, they ruin. I suppose it was my job to clean up after mine. The words carried no bitterness now, only finality. Neighbors who had once whispered about Samantha's extravagance now nodded approvingly as they walked by. Some dropped off homemade casseroles, others stopped to compliment the blooming garden. One even said, "It's nice to see the place finally look lived in." Clara accepted their words graciously, though she knew the truth. It wasn't just the house that had changed, it was the energy inside it. At dusk, Clara often sat by the new fountain, its gentle trickle soothing in a way the old pool parties never were. She'd sip her tea while Lily studied nearby. The house filled with the quiet sounds of turning pages and laughter instead of hollow boasting. This mansion was no longer Samantha's performance stage, it was Clara's sanctuary. But peace had a way of being interrupted. One afternoon, while Clara and Lily browsed the shelves of a local bookstore, Marjorie arrived with news. She leaned close, her voice low but tinged with satisfaction. "You'll want to see this," she said, handing Clara a folded flyer. Clara opened it. An advertisement for a new boutique downtown, its model wearing a forced smile behind a cash register. The name printed underneath froze Clara for only a second. Samantha Holt, sales associate. Clara handed the flyer back to Marjorie, her expression unreadable. Samantha, once the queen of her mansion, was now ringing up strangers' purchases for an hourly wage. The glow of Samantha's phone lit up her face late into the night. Her fingers flew furiously across the screen, posts and stories spilling out one after another. My own mother stole my house. She's bitter, jealous, toxic. You don't do this to your family. Parasite? She proved it, feeding on her children's success. The comments came quickly at first, a trickle of sympathy from casual acquaintances, a few half-hearted emojis, but the tide turned within hours. Links to public foreclosure records began circulating. Clara Jennings, legal owner, Samantha Holt, evicted resident. Screenshots of the court ruling spread across group chats. Former friends who had once posed in Samantha's mansion began quietly unfollowing, distancing themselves from the scandal. Her social circle, built on appearances and envy, dissolved like sugar in water. Meanwhile, Derek had grown silent at home. He no longer defended her rants, no longer offered excuses. One morning, Samantha came downstairs to find a suitcase by the door. He didn't look at her as he adjusted his cufflinks. "I filed for divorce." Her breath caught. "You're leaving me?" He finally turned, his expression hollow. "You were never in love with me, Sam. You were in love with the stage." He picked up the suitcase and walked out, the door clicking softly behind him. Samantha collapsed against the wall, phone slipping from her hand. For the first time, no one was watching. Clara, across town, read none of Samantha's rants. She had no need to. The truth was already working on her behalf. Instead, she sat with Marjorie at her dining table, writing out a check. The memo line read, "Women's Housing Fund." "This was rent money," Clara said, sliding the check into its envelope. "I'd rather it go to women building new homes than to a daughter who destroyed hers." Marjorie lifted her wine glass, amused. "From parasite to patron." Clara only smiled, sealing the envelope with quiet satisfaction. That evening, Lily curled up beside her grandmother on the couch, textbooks balanced on her knees. "Grandma," she said softly, "you're incredible. You didn't just fight back. You turned everything she threw at you into something good." Clara stroked her granddaughter's hair, her voice warm. "That's the trick, Lily. Parasites drain, builders restore. Which would you rather be?" "Builder," Lily whispered, nestling closer. Clara kissed the top of her head. "Then you'll never live a life like hers." But in Samantha's world, the walls continued to close in. Creditors called daily, their voices sharp and unyielding. With Derek gone and friends vanished, the numbers swallowed her whole. At last, with shaking hands, she signed the papers she once swore she'd never touch. A single word stamped in black ink sealed her fate. Bankruptcy. She denied me legacy. I denied her inheritance. The law office smelled faintly of leather and ink, the walls lined with shelves of casebooks that had outlived decades of families and their fortunes. Clara sat across from Marjorie, her pearls resting neatly against her blouse, her back straight. On the polished oak table lay the draft of her new will. Neat, typed lines spelled out the future with the precision of a verdict. Beneficiary, Lily Jennings. Exclusions, Samantha Holt, with cause documented. Marjorie tapped her pen against the margin. Every clause is airtight. Contesting this would be like trying to blow out a candle under glass. Clara adjusted her glasses, scanning the lines slowly, carefully. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "It has to be clear. She won't twist my silence into something it never was." Marjorie nodded. "It's more than clear. It's iron." That evening, back in her study, Clara uncapped her fountain pen. On the desk sat thick cream-colored stationery, her handwriting steady despite her age. She wrote not in legalese, but in love. "To Lily, the only one who gave me water when I was parched with humiliation. You saw me when others turned away. This home, these savings, this legacy, they are yours. Not because of blood alone, but because of kindness. Use them to build, to protect, to restore. Let no one ever call you a parasite for needing dignity. And never, ever let greed strip you of compassion." She set down the pen, folded the letter carefully, and tucked it into the envelope that bore Lily's name. Later, Lily sat with her grandmother in the library, the fountain's soft trickle audible through the open window. Clara slid the envelope across the table. "For when I'm gone," she said simply. Lily's eyes welled as she opened it, scanning the handwritten words. Halfway through, Her breath caught, and she pressed the letter to her chest. "Grandma," her voice cracked. "You're giving me everything?" Clara's hand closed gently over hers. "You gave me something first, Lily. You gave me respect. That's worth more than all the marble in this house." Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks as she leaned over, hugging her grandmother tightly. "I'll make you proud, I promise." "You already have," Clara whispered. Back at Marjorie's office, the documents were stamped, notarized, and sealed in their envelopes. The sound of the heavy seal-pressing wax was final, like the closing of a vault. Clara exhaled as if she had been holding her breath for years. "It's done," Marjorie said. "Your daughter has no claim. None." Clara gave a single nod, her lips pressed in a line of quiet triumph. "Then my legacy will never rot in her hands." Across town, Samantha sat in a cramped apartment, her phone buzzing with another call she didn't answer. Bills spread across the table, their red stamps screaming louder than her sobs. She grabbed the latest envelope, ripped it open with shaking hands. In bold black letters across the top, "Debt collection notice, court mandated." The mansion-turned-sanctuary stood brighter than ever, roses blooming by the fountain, books filling every shelf of the library. Yet across town, Samantha's name was spoken only in whispers, her face absent from the parties she once lived for. The invitations stopped coming first, then the texts, then even the curious glances at the grocery store. People looked through her now, as if she were already a ghost in Miami's glittering social scene. One neighbor summed it up quietly over coffee. She thought she was the sun. Turns out she was just a shadow. Derek had already vanished. Word spread that he'd taken a job in another state. Some small investment firm willing to overlook his failed track record in exchange for his connections. But the move was a clean break. His apartment was leased in his name alone, the divorce finalized with cold efficiency. When asked about Samantha, he offered nothing, not even bitterness, just silence. And in that silence, Samantha faded even further, like a painting left too long in the sun. Meanwhile, Lily thrived. On the steps of her college, she walked with books pressed to her chest, a smile on her lips. Tuition was paid in full, her future clear. Professors noted her sharpness, her kindness, her ability to listen, qualities she carried from Clara's influence. One evening, she called home. "Grandma, I got into the honors program." Clara's voice, warm through the receiver, answered, "Of course you did. You're free to grow because you're not chained by someone else's debts." Lily laughed softly. "That's because of you." But Clara only smiled, gazing out at the fountain's steady trickle. "No, that's because of who you are. I just made sure you had room to prove it." Later that week, Clara sat with Marjorie on the back patio, the scent of blooming roses drifting through the night air. "Parasites feed until the host is gone," Clara said, her tone reflective, calm. "I chose not to be her host." Marjorie raised her glass of wine, her eyes glinting. "And you never will be again." They clinked glasses, the soft chime sealing the truth of it. Clara's strength had not gone unnoticed. Donations flowed steadily from her accounts to local charities, shelters for women, scholarships for young girls, housing initiatives for single mothers. Her name began appearing in newsletters, not as gossip, but as gratitude. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because building had always been her calling, and now she had the means to build without anyone draining her dry. Neighbors spoke of her not as Samantha's mother, but as Clara Jennings, dignified, generous, unshakable. One quiet afternoon, Lily returned home from campus. She found Clara in the library, cataloging books, the late sunlight painting gold across her silver hair. "Grandma," Lily said softly, "I found something in the desk upstairs." She held up a small envelope, its seal unbroken, Clara's handwriting across the front. "To Lily, for after. Clara looked at it for a long moment, her lips pressed into a faint smile. Lily sat down, carefully sliding a finger under the seal. The paper crackled as it opened, her grandmother's last secret waiting to be read. A year had passed since the mansion changed hands, and yet every corner of it still whispered Clara's triumph. The marble floors no longer echoed with hollow parties. Instead, they carried the soft shuffle of slippers, the rustle of pages, the laughter of Lily studying late into the night. On this particular morning, Clara sat by the garden fountain, the Florida sun glinting off the rippling water. The roses bloomed thick and red, their fragrance carried by the breeze. A glass of cool water rested beside her chair, condensation dripping slowly down its side. Lily appeared, an envelope in her hand, the one she had found weeks earlier in the desk upstairs. She sank into the chair across from her grandmother, her expression solemn but expectant. "Grandma," she whispered, "I think it's time." Clara nodded, her gaze steady, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Lily broke the seal gently, unfolding the letter with care. Her eyes moved over the lines, her lips parting as she read aloud. "Don't beg dignity. Own it. No one can strip from you what you refuse to surrender. Remember this. Lily, strength isn't in what you take, but in what you preserve. Legacy is not money, not property, not even houses. It is how you choose to stand when others try to knock you down. That will outlive anything I leave you." Lily's voice trembled on the final words. She pressed the paper to her chest, tears pooling in her eyes. "Your strength is my inheritance," she said softly, looking up at Clara. Clara reached for her hand, her grip warm and sure. "And that's worth more than any house," she said, her voice steady as the fountain's flow. Marjorie joined them a moment later, carrying a tray with 3 glasses and a bottle of champagne. Her sharp eyes softened as she looked around the garden, at the roses, at Lily's teary smile, at Clara's serene composure. She poured each glass, raising hers high. "To parasites," she said dryly, the corner of her mouth curling. "May they starve." Lily laughed through her tears, lifting her glass. Clara chuckled too, the sound low and rich, before taking a slow sip of water instead. The water tasted clean, crisp, better than champagne. It was dignity in liquid form, her quiet symbol of victory. As the evening sun dipped lower, Clara looked across the lawn to the house she had reclaimed. Its windows glowed warmly, no longer hollow shells of vanity but lanterns of comfort. Every room bore her touch, the library, the garden, the study where Lily's future was being written. And somewhere across town, Samantha lived in the shadow of bankruptcy, her voice drowned out, her pride stripped to silence. Clara did not need to see it. She already knew. Parasites could not survive once the host walked away. She leaned back, her shoulders loosening as she let the sound of the fountain fill the air. For the first time in decades, she felt completely at peace. Clara smiled at the mansion she had reclaimed, her voice a whisper to no one and everyone at once. "She called me parasite. I drained her dry.